There's a quote that I just constantly come back to, and it helps me reset myself. It's from an author named Levi Lusko, and it's short, but it just crushes my soul every time I read it. If nothing changes, future you will be an exaggerated version of present you. I want to read that again because it's so clarifying. If nothing changes, future you will be an exaggerated version of present you. And I don't think of this as a motivational line. I think of it as a warning. And here's why it stops me. Here's why it makes me step back and think. Because for most of the senior leaders I work with, present you is already stretched thin. For myself, present me is already stretched too thin. Always reactive, already working hard and still feeling behind. So if nothing changes, if you just add more hours to the same patterns, future you isn't better. Future you is just louder, tireder, and more burned out. And today I want to talk to you about what actually has to change, not just what to do, but why what you do works at a psychological level. And I'm going to use a real story and some real research to show you. Let's get into it. This is Leadership Unlocked. Here's what I see with senior leaders constantly. And I do mean constantly to include myself. And I see this across industries and across company sizes. You're not underperforming, but by most measures, you're doing really well. But there's this pattern in it, and I think you'll recognize it. You're moving fast, checking things off, responding to everything that needs a response. And at the end of most weeks, there's a quiet voice in the back of your head saying, did I actually work on the stuff that really matters? And the research puts a number on this. McKinsey surveyed executives and found that 52%, more than half, say that their time allocation doesn't match their organization's strategic priorities. Only 9% feel very satisfied with how they spend their time. 9%. And these are the most experienced, most capable leaders in their organizations. And they're spending most of their time on the wrong things. And I talked about this before, and this is so incredibly powerful because the cost isn't just professional. The DDI leadership report from 2024 found that 56% of leaders are burned out. And that's up from 52% just the year before. Deloitte found that 70% of C-suite executives have considered leaving their jobs specifically for their own well-being. 70%. 73% say they can't fully disconnect from work. I've been there. I'm still there some of the time. I know what it looks and feels like. You're physically home, but mentally still at the office. Your family gets what's ever left. And that gap between the leader you know you're capable of being and the one who's actually showing up, that gap doesn't close on its own. Here's what I've learned. You just can't effort your way out of this. You can't grind and buckle down and do more. It's not more hours, more discipline, more grinding. That's not going to fix it because this isn't a work ethic problem. It's a foundational system problem. And that's the Lusko warning. If nothing changes, the gap widens. I want to tell you about a leader I'll call Robert. About 8 weeks ago, Robert was in the first session of a leadership program that I run, our group Visions Victory Leadership Accelerator. He's a really smart guy and he's experienced and he's building something really cool. And in that first conversation, he said something I hear from almost every leader who comes in. I feel like I'm always behind. I'm always reacting. And I can see where I want to go, but I just can't actually get there. And I mean, you know that gap. I know that gap. It's the gap between knowing and doing, between the vision in your head and the reality of your days. Robert had been living in that gap for a while. So here's what we didn't do. We didn't hand him a new productivity system. We didn't build a better calendar. We didn't optimize his task list. We slowed him down first. I know that it sounds like the opposite of what an overwhelmed leader needs, but here's the psychology behind it. Dr. Sophie Leroy at the University of Washington has done research on something she calls attention residue. And here's what that means. When you switch from one task to another without fully completing the first one, thoughts about the previous task keep intruding. They run in the background. They consume cognitive capacity. You're technically on the next thing, but part of your brain is still on the last one. Her research found that people who switch tasks without full cognitive disengagement suffer impaired performance, slower response time, and more errors. And for the leaders who average 17 meetings per week compared to 8 for typical employees, that's a constant cycle of partial attention all day, every day. And for some of us, it's 17 meetings a day. Here's what makes it even worse. When you don't have deep clarity on what actually matters most, your brain has no filter. It can't evaluate what deserves your full attention. So it defaults to urgency, responding to whatever is loudest. That's not weakness. It's neuroscience, but it's quietly destroying your capacity to lead strategically. So before we talked about execution with Robert, we talked about clarity, real clarity, not here are my Q3 priorities clarity, but foundational clarity. Why do you exist as a leader? What are you actually trying to build? What does winning look like? Not this quarter, but 3 years from now. That's where we started. And here's what happened. It wasn't magic. It was sequence. Once Robert had that foundation, his relationship to the noise changed. It did not disappear. But now he had a filter. He could ask, does this connect to what I'm actually building? And when the answer was no, he had somewhere to stand. From there, we built organizational alignment. And here's the truth I keep coming back to. Most of what leaders call execution problems are actually alignment problems in disguise. The drop balls, miscommunication, the how did they not know that moments, almost all of them trace back to unspoken expectations. Peter Drucker put it this way, and man, I love Peter Drucker. Accountability must be accepted, not assigned. You can put someone's name next to a task, but that's a responsibility. But if they haven't explicitly said, yes, I own this, if there hasn't been a real commitment, not just a nod, you don't have accountability. You have hope. And as we all know, hope is not a leadership strategy. Robert's team didn't get new people. They got new clarity. 8 weeks into our program, we were wrapping up our Friday session, and Robert said, this is my last meeting of the day. I'm going home. And for the first time in a long time, I'm going to be with my family. We're hitting numbers we've never hit. We're exceeding our goals. And I feel like I'm in a place where I can disconnect and focus on what's really most important. He shared with me that he had been deploying each of these tools as we walked through them week after week as part of the sequence with his team. And then he said something I haven't stopped thinking about. I can't tell you how powerful it's been to get the clarity and from that build the alignment and then actually deliver on the execution we needed as an organization. He didn't get his Friday back because he worked harder. He got it back because he finally built on the right foundation in the right sequence. Here's the truth that most leaders won't admit. You're not stuck because you don't know what to do. You're stuck because you haven't codified how you lead. Our Vision to Victory Leadership Accelerator is where we fix that. It's a 12-week experience where we install the leadership operating system, the frameworks, the cadence, the metrics that turn your instincts into a repeatable system your team can follow. You'll walk out with clarity on your vision, a strategy that aligns your team, and an execution rhythm that compounds over time. There are only 12 seats and our next cohort launches April 14th. This is not a course, it's a small group of leaders building together. If you're ready to lead with clarity instead of chaos, go to b2bleadership.com to learn more. So let me decode the psychology of what actually happened with Robert and why this particular sequence works. And here's the thing. These principles work whether you're going through a formal program like mine or you start applying them on your own tomorrow. We just make it systematic and easy to apply, but the principles stand on their own. The sequence is this: clarity first, then build alignment, and then execution. In that order, always in that order. And here's why each layer matters. Layer 1, clarity. It's the decision filter your brain has been waiting for. Most leaders treat clarity as a byproduct. I'll get clear as I go. And I understand that instinct. It feels efficient. It feels responsive to what's going on in the world. But here's the problem. Without a clear framework for prioritizing, research shows that decision fatigue sets in and cognitive capacity degrades throughout the day. The 2020 Neuron study found that structured decision routines, having a real framework for what matters, reduce mental effort by 27%. That's not a small number. Leaders who lack clarity aren't just frustrated, they're neurologically depleted before noon. And here's the approach that actually works. And I know this. This is the type of systems and processes that we deploy, that I've been deploying, that the leaders I work with for many, many years have been doing. And frankly, it's a bit counterintuitive. Future back thinking instead of present forward thinking. Most leaders start with where they are and ask, what's next? That's present forward. It's incremental. It keeps you constrained by today's reality. Future back is different. You define where you want to be specifically, vividly, 3 years from now, and then you work backward. What must be true in order for me to get there? What has to change? You let that destination do the pulling instead of letting today do the pushing. And when you do that, your brain finally has a filter. Every request, every meeting, every priority, you can evaluate it against something real. Clarity doesn't eliminate hard decisions. It dramatically reduces the energy required to make them. Layer 2, alignment, where most execution problems actually live. As a leader, once you have that personal clarity, you can begin to build organizational alignment. This is where most leaders are bleeding out without even realizing it. Think about that. Last time something fell through the cracks on your team, when you trace it back, really trace it, it almost never comes back to laziness or incompetence. It comes back to a gap between what was expected to be done and what was understood, between what was said and what was genuinely committed to. Unmet expectations are almost always unspoken expectations. Research on explicit commitment backs this up. When someone verbally says, yes, you can count on me, their brain processes it as internal ownership. When someone is told they're responsible for something, without that verbal commitment, the brain processes it as external assignment. It's the same task, completely different psychology, and completely different follow through. Drucker called it accountability must be accepted, not assigned. You can assign responsibility all day long, but if there's no genuine commitment behind it, you're just hoping. And then we all know hope is not a strategy. Alignment is the work of closing that gap deliberately, making the implicit explicit, asking for commitment instead of assuming it. Layer 3, execution. Why rhythm beats willpower every time. Now and only now do we start talking about execution. And here's what I want to challenge directly. The idea that better execution requires more discipline or willpower. I have been guilty of that belief. In fact, I have to break free from that paradigm myself over and over again. Most high-performing leaders do too. It doesn't work, and the research explains why. You remember the attention residue from Dr. Leroy's research? Leaders without execution rhythms are managing constant residue, dozens of incomplete tasks and unresolved decisions running in the background simultaneously. Every deferred decision, every unclear next step, every open loop that's consuming bandwidth. That's why you're depleted by mid-afternoon, even on a day that didn't feel especially hard. The fix isn't more willpower. It's closure, consistent, predictable rhythms, a daily startup routine, a weekly planning moment, a quarterly reset. Those things that give your brain permission to let go. When you have dedicated time to review and plan, your brain stops trying to hold everything at once. The cognitive load drops and the quality of your attention goes up. The Imperial College London study found that leaders using structured prioritization, having a real system for what gets attention, improved their task prioritization accuracy by 33% within 6 weeks. 6 weeks. That's not a long time to fundamentally change how you execute. Robert didn't execute better because he pushed harder. He installed rhythms, one per week, deliberately applied in a sequence. And what looked like discipline from the outside was just a well-designed system doing its job. Okay, Obviously, I'm passionate about this, but let me make this practical because insight without application is just interesting noise. And that's not why you're here. That's not why you're listening. 3 things in sequence that you can start this week on clarity. Block 30 minutes. Protect it. Don't squeeze it in between meetings and answer one question. What am I actually trying to build in the next 12 months? And why does it matter beyond the revenue? Write it down. One paragraph. That paragraph becomes your decision filter for the week. If a request, a meeting, a priority doesn't connect to that answer, it goes to the bottom of the list. It doesn't get responded to because it was urgent. On alignment, identify one recurring frustration on your team, a dropped ball, a repeated miscommunication, something that you keep chasing, and ask yourself honestly, have I been genuinely clear about what I expect? And have I explicitly asked for commitment? Not assumed it, asked for it. Can I count on you to own this? Let me say that again because it's so powerful. Can I count on you to own this? And then wait for the real answer. That one question asked consistently eliminates more execution problems than any system I've ever seen. On rhythm, put just 20 minutes on your calendar. Friday afternoon, Monday morning, it's your call. It's a standing appointment with yourself every week. There are only 3 questions. Number 1, what happened last week that I should learn from? Number 2, what matters most this coming week? And number 3, what gets my best hours? That's it. If you do that for 60 days, I promise you're going to feel a different kind of Friday. Here's today's takeaway, and I want to be super candid. Clarity precedes momentum, not as a tagline, as a psychological fact. Your brain cannot prioritize, filter, or execute consistently without a clear foundation to work from. The research backs it up. The best leaders I've ever worked with confirm it. And Robert, he lived it. No amount of effort fixes a foundational problem. Get clear on who you are and why you lead. Get your team aligned around what matters and what they've actually committed to own. And then install the rhythms that make it consistent. In that order, always in that order. That's what Robert did. And that's what future you, the one Levi Lusko was warning you about, is waiting for you to start. Before you get back to your week, I want to leave you with a question I ask every leader at the very beginning of our work together. If nothing changes, if you stay on this exact trajectory you're on right now, what does your leadership look like and feel like 2 years from now? Sit with that, because the answer is either going to confirm you're building on the right foundation, or it's going to show you exactly where to start. And if this episode resonates, share it with one leader in your world who's been running hard, but hasn't had a chance to slow down and get clear. Sometimes the most generous thing that you can do for someone is hand them 20 minutes that reframes the whole problem. Thanks for being part of the Leadership Unlocked community. Now go create some clarity. These frameworks, this psychology, our entire sequence of work on the Leadership Accelerator programs that I run are built on this. You don't have to go through a formal program to deploy them. Just use these tools, use this thinking. And if you're interested in learning more from us about how we do it, just book a free complimentary clarity call. I'd love to chat and help understand what's really going on in your world so you can exceed your expectations and meet your potential. Hey, before you go, if this episode helped you see leadership differently, I have 3 personal requests. First, and this is the most important one, share this with one leader who needs it. Think of someone in your network who's frustrated with their team's execution or is trying to scale their own impact. Copy this episode link right now and text them, hey, I just listened to this episode and I think you'll get real value from it. That simple act of sharing, that is servant leadership in action. Second, subscribe to Leadership Unlocked. Whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or your favorite podcast player, just hit subscribe or the follow button. That way you won't miss the next episode and it helps us reach more leaders like you. And third, if you're willing, This would be a huge help for us. Leave a 5-star rating and write a quick review. I know it takes 60 seconds of your time, but here's what it does. It helps other leaders discover the show. Every rating, every review, it's how we expand our impact together. So those 3 things: share with a friend, subscribe, leave a review. I'm deeply appreciative, and that would give us so much help. Thanks for being part of the Leadership Unlocked community. Now go create some clarity for others.